Oak Ridge, Connecticut, 2016. The October afternoon was crisp and golden, leaves crunching beneath 13-year-old Melody Parker's sneakers as she walked the familiar route to her piano lesson. She'd made the same journey every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 years, 11 blocks from Oak Ridge Middle School to Mrs. Abernathy's Victorian home on Maple Street. Her sheet music and theory workbooks tucked neatly into her blue backpack. Melody was a creature of habit. Same route, same schedule, same routine of texting her mother when she arrived at her lesson, though her parents had recently started discussing whether she was old enough to discontinue this practice. "You're nearly 14, her father had said just that morning over breakfast. "Maybe it's time we ease up on the helicopter parenting." "It's not helicopter parenting to want to know our daughter arrived safely," her mother had countered, though without much conviction. Laura Parker was a psychology professor who regularly lectured on the importance of fostering independence in adolescence. "But I suppose we could revisit the issue on your birthday next month." Melody had smiled, pleased at this small acknowledgement of her growing maturity. She was responsible, straight-A student, first chair clarinet in the school band, and according to Mrs. Abernathy, a pianist of remarkable promise. She'd recently begun working on Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece normally reserved for much more advanced students. As she walked, Melody mentally rehearsed the difficult middle section, her fingers tapping the rhythms against her thigh. The shortcut through Wilson Park would save her 5 minutes, time she could use to practice before her lesson officially began. Mrs. Abernathy never minded when she arrived early. The park was quiet on weekday afternoons, especially as the weather turned cooler. A few dog walkers, sometimes retirees feeding the ducks at the small pond. Today, Melody noticed a grounds maintenance truck parked near the footbridge, but saw no workers nearby. She took the path that wound through a small copse of trees, emerging onto the footbridge that spanned the narrow part of the pond. Halfway across, she paused to watch a formation of geese flying overhead, their honking calls echoing across the water. That was the last confirmed sighting of Melody Parker. At 4:15 p.m., Mrs. Abernathy called Laura Parker to ask if Melody would be coming to her lesson. By 4:30, Laura had called her husband, Melody's school, and all of her daughter's friends. By 5 o'clock, she had retraced the route from school to the piano teacher's house, growing increasingly frantic. By 5:45, the first police officers were taking statements and organizing a search. By midnight, Melody's school photo was being broadcast on local news stations. Her details entered into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children database, and search teams with dogs were combing Wilson Park, where a witness reported seeing a girl matching Melody's description that afternoon. They found her backpack the next morning, half hidden beneath a rhododendron bush near the footbridge. The sheet music for Chopin's Nocturne was missing, though her theory workbooks remained. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no obvious evidence beyond the abandoned backpack. Melody Parker had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions that would haunt her family and community for years to come. If stories like this one stay with you long after the video ends, consider supporting this channel. Hit the like button and subscribe to Gone Cold Now. Every week, we share real unsolved cases, stories that deserve to be heard and remembered. Detective Samantha Reeves had been with the Oak Ridge Police Department for 15 years when she was assigned as lead investigator on the Parker case. At 42, she had handled missing persons cases before, but something about Melody's disappearance affected her deeply. Perhaps it was the ordinary circumstances, a responsible girl taking a familiar route in broad daylight. Perhaps it was a piano music connection. Reeves had played as a child and still kept a keyboard in her apartment. Or perhaps it was a haunted look in Laura and Daniel Parker's eyes, a look that said they understood their lives had been cleaved into before and after, with no path back to what had been. The first 48 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Sex offender registries were checked. Registered offenders living within a 10-mile radius were interviewed. Security footage from businesses along Melody's route was reviewed. A team of officers went door-to-door along the paths she might have taken. Dive teams searched the park pond, though it was shallow enough that a body would have been readily visible. The grounds maintenance truck seen in the park became an early focus. Records showed it belonged to the city parks department, and had been assigned to a two-person team scheduled to trim bushes near the duck pond that day. Both workers were interviewed extensively, their alibis checked, their background scrutinized. Nothing raised red flags. A K-9 unit tracked Melody's scent from the backpack to the footbridge, then along the path toward the park's western exit, where it abruptly stopped at the street. This suggested she might have entered a vehicle, either willingly or by force. Did Melody know anyone with a car who might have offered her a ride? Reeves had asked the Parkers during one of many painful interviews. She wouldn't have gotten into a car with someone she didn't know, Laura Parker insisted, dark circles under her eyes testifying to sleepless nights. We've had that conversation many times. What about someone she did know? A family friend? A teacher? Someone from church? The Parkers provided names, all of which were investigated. Nothing led to Melody. As days stretched to weeks, the case grew colder. Media attention waned. The community vigils, once attended by hundreds, dwindled to dozens, then to just family and close friends. The search area had been expanded multiple times, covering a 20-mile radius around Oak Ridge, but yielded nothing significant. The Parkers struggled to maintain normalcy. Daniel returned to his job as an engineer at an aerospace company, though colleagues noted he was a shell of his former self. Laura took a leave of absence from the university, then eventually resigned her position. Unable to lecture on child development when her own child's fate remained unknown. They maintained Melody's room exactly as she had left it that morning. Bed neatly made, desk organized with textbooks and notebooks, walls adorned with posters of pianists and bands she admired. The piano in the living room remained untouched, sheet music still open to the Chopin nocturne she had been practicing. On the one-year anniversary of the disappearance, the Parkers established a scholarship in Melody's name for young musicians at the local art center. It was their way of ensuring that even if their search for answers failed, their daughter's love of music would continue to make a difference in the world. Detective Reeves attended the scholarship announcement ceremony, watching from the back of the room as Laura Parker spoke briefly about her daughter's passion for music. Afterward, Reeves approached the couple. "I want you to know we haven't given up," she told them quietly. "The case is still active. I still review the file every week." Daniel Parker nodded, his face a mask of controlled grief. "We appreciate that, Detective, but we've also accepted that we may never know what happened to her." "We haven't accepted that," Laura corrected, a flash of the academic she once was showing through her grief. "We've acknowledged it as a possibility. There's a difference." Reeves nodded, understanding the distinction. Sometimes cases break open years later, often from unexpected sources. We have to be ready when that happens. None of them could have known how prophetic those words would prove to be, or that 6 more years would pass before that unexpected source would emerge from the woods of Wilson Park. Chapter 3. The Sheet Music, Oak Ridge, Connecticut, 2023. Kevin Delaney, 16, considered himself an amateur nature photographer. He'd received a decent digital camera for his birthday and spent much of his free time in Wilson Park, capturing images of wildlife and changing seasons. On this particular March morning, he'd risen before dawn, hoping to photograph deer in the early morning light. The winter had been harsh, with heavy snowfall followed by unusually warm temperatures that caused significant flooding throughout the region. The landscape was still recovering, with fallen trees and eroded embankments along the park's small streams. Kevin was setting up a shot of a particularly dramatic uprooted oak when he noticed something white and weathered protruding from the tangled roots. Curious, he set down his camera and moved closer to investigate. It was paper, several sheets, degraded but partially preserved, apparently having been protected within the root system of the tree. Kevin carefully extracted the pages, realizing they were sheet music. The title page was still legible. Nocturne in E-flat major, Op. 9, No. 2 by Frédéric Chopin. He might have simply considered it interesting debris, perhaps discarded by a music student, had he not noticed something else. Handwritten notes in the margins and a name written in the top right corner of the first page, Melody Parker. Kevin had grown up in Oak Ridge. He'd been only 9 when Melody disappeared, but her case had profoundly affected the community. The annual scholarship concert in her name was a regular event at his school. Her photo, a smiling girl with dark hair and a bright expression, had hung in the community center for years. With shaking hands, he took photos of the sheet music in situ, then carefully placed the pages in his camera bag. Rather than continuing his photography, he hurried home to show his discovery to his parents, who immediately contacted the police. Within hours, Detective Samantha Reeves was sitting at the Delaney's kitchen table, wearing latex gloves as she carefully examined the weathered sheets. Despite 7 years in the elements, protected only by the tree roots, portions of the music were remarkably preserved. And more importantly, there were notes in the margins that hadn't been part of the original investigation. In the upper margin of the second page, written in what appeared to be Melody's handwriting, was a series of letters and numbers. WB 37LR. On the third page, another notation, not alone. And most significantly, on the final page, written in different handwriting altogether, she's safe now. Don't look. Reeves felt a chill run through her body, despite the warmth of the Delaney kitchen. After 7 years of dead ends, they finally had something new, a possible code, a warning, and a chilling message from what could be the person responsible for Melody's disappearance. I need to take these to the lab immediately, she told the Delaneys. And I'll need to speak with Kevin about exactly where and how he found them. As she carefully placed the sheet music in an evidence bag, Reeves was already mentally preparing for her next call, to Laura and Daniel Parker. After years of uncertainty, this discovery would simultaneously offer them the first tangible connection to their daughter since her backpack was found, and potentially confirm their worst fears about what had happened to her. The message, she's safe now, don't look, suggested Melody might be dead, the writer perhaps believing she was safe in whatever afterlife they envisioned. But the code, WB 37LR, offered a counter possibility. It could be a location, an identifier, something that might finally lead them to answers. As she drove back to the station, Reeves felt a familiar surge of determination that sustained her through countless difficult cases. Whatever these cryptic messages meant, wherever they might lead, she would follow the trail to its end. She owed that much to Melody and to the parents who had waited 7 years for answers. What she couldn't know was that the discovery of the sheet music had already set off a chain reaction elsewhere in Oak Ridge, that someone who had long believed their secret was safely buried was now frantically making plans to ensure it remained that way. Girl vanished on the way to piano lessons. 7 years later, a sheet of music found in the woods reveals. Chapter 4. The code to Parker home had changed little in 7 years. The piano still dominated the living room, though now it was dusty from disuse. Laura and Daniel sat close together on the couch, hands clasped as Detective Reeves laid out photographs of the sheet music on their coffee table. We've analyzed the handwriting, Reeves explained. The first notation, WB 37LR, is definitely Melody's. The not alone appears to be hers as well, though written hastily. The final message, she hesitated. That's from someone else. Laura's fingers trembled as she reached toward the photos without touching them. These were in Wilson Park all this time, just waiting to be found. Inside the root system of a tree that was recently uprooted by flooding, Reeves confirmed. The lab estimates they had been there for most, if not all, of the past 7 years. What does the code mean? Daniel asked, his engineer's mind immediately focusing on the puzzle. WB37LR? That's what we're trying to determine. Reeves said, could it be significant to Melody? A locker combination, perhaps? A phone number? Laura shook her head slowly, then suddenly froze. Wait, WB could be Westbrook Building. It's on the north side of town. It used to be an old textile factory, but it was converted to offices and studios maybe 15 years ago. And LR? Reeves prompted. Lower level, maybe? Or? Laura's eyes widened. Lesson room. Mrs. Abernathy taught at the Westbrook Building before moving lessons to her home. She rented Studio 37 for years. Reeves immediately pulled out her phone, making notes. Mrs. Abernathy never mentioned this. Because it wasn't relevant, Daniel said. Melody took lessons at her house, not Westbrook. But Melody would have known about the studio, Laura insisted. She went there once when Mrs. Abernathy needed to pick up some music. She talked about the grand piano there, said it was much better than the upright at Mrs. Abernathy's house. Reeves stood, already dialing the station. I need to check if Westbrook Building is still operating and who occupies Studio 37 now. This could be our first real lead in years. As she stepped outside to make her calls, Laura and Daniel stared at the final message on the sheet music. She's safe now. Don't look. You don't think. Laura couldn't finish the sentence. Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders. We don't know anything yet. Let's not jump to conclusions. But the fear that had lived with them for 7 years now had a new, sharper edge. Had Melody been trying to leave them a clue about where she was being taken? And who had written that final, chilling message? Chapter 5. Studio 37, the Westbrook Building, stood on the outskirts of Oak Ridge, its red brick exterior and large windows testifying to its industrial past. Now it housed a collection of small businesses, art studios, and practice rooms for music teachers and their students. Detective Reeves arrived with 2 officers, having obtained the building's rental records. Studio 37 had changed hands several times since Mrs. Abernathy's tenure. Currently, it was leased to an accounting firm for document storage. The building manager, a nervous man in his 60s named Harold Winters, led them through the main entrance and down a flight of stairs to the lower level. Been storing financial records there for about 4 years now. Winters explained as they walked. Before that, it was empty for a while. Had water damage from a burst pipe. And before the water damage? Reeves asked. Let me think. Oh, right. Guy named Raymond Blackwell had it. Taught music lessons. Guitar, I think. Left abruptly after the pipe burst. Reeves stopped walking. Blackwell? Was he working here in 2016? Winters nodded. Yeah. Moved in right after the Abernathy woman left. Must have been around 2014 or 2015. Quiet fellow. Kept to himself. Reeves' pulse quickened. A music teacher they hadn't interviewed during the original investigation. One who took over Mrs. Abernathy's old studio. Do you have contact information for him? Probably in the old files. But like I said, he left without much notice. Didn't even ask for a security deposit back. Studio 37 was unremarkable. A windowless room about 15 feet square, now filled with metal shelving and cardboard boxes of financial records. Nothing to suggest it had once been a music studio, much less connected to a missing girl. We'll need to process this entire room, Reeves told the officers accompanying her. Every inch. And I want background on Raymond Blackwell immediately. Back at the station, the pieces began falling into place with disturbing speed. Raymond Blackwell had no record in Connecticut before 2014. His teaching credentials were falsified. The social security number he provided to the Westbrook Building belonged to a man who had died in 1997. Most damning of all, a Raymond Blackwell matching his description had been questioned in connection with the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl in Vermont in 2013. That case had gone cold when Blackwell vanished from the area. He's been doing this for years, Reeves realized, staring at the bulletin board where they'd assembled everything they knew about Blackwell. Moving to a new area, establishing himself as a music teacher, targeting young girls, then disappearing when suspicion arises. The question now was whether Melody had been his only victim in Oak Ridge, and whether she might still be alive. Chapter 6. The cab and the forensic team found nothing conclusive in Studio 37. 7 years and multiple tenants had erased any useful physical evidence. But the investigation into Raymond Blackwell was yielding results. Records showed he had purchased a hunting cabin in the mountains 40 miles west of Oak Ridge, paying cash in 2015. The property was remote, accessible only by a dirt road, with no close neighbors. As dawn broke on a cold April morning, Detective Reeves led a tactical team toward the cabin. Satellite imagery showed the structure appeared abandoned, with no signs of recent occupation. But they approached with caution, weapons ready. The cabin was small and weathered, its windows boarded from the inside. The door was secured with a heavy padlock. On Reeves' signal, officers breached the entrance, the sound of splintering was shattering the morning quiet. Inside, dust covered every surface. The main room contained basic furniture, a table, chairs, a wood stove. But it was the back room that made Reeves' blood run cold. The walls were covered with soundproofing material. A narrow bed sat against one wall. Beside it, incongruously, stood a digital keyboard on a stand, with sheet music neatly arranged on top, all Chopin nocturnes. "He kept her here," Reeves whispered, taking in the grim scene. "He made her play for him." As the forensic team processed the cabin, they made more disturbing discoveries. Hidden beneath floorboards were journals, newspaper clippings about missing girls from across New England, and forged identification documents with different names. But the most significant find came when they removed the cabin's wall paneling, revealing a space behind the soundproof room, a crawl space just large enough for a person to squeeze through, leading to a crude tunnel and a metal hatch that opened to the forest beyond. An escape route, one of the officers observed, or a way to dispose of evidence. Reeves countered grimly. They followed the tunnel to its exit, emerging into a small clearing surrounded by dense pine forest. There, partially exposed by spring runoff, they found what they both hoped and dreaded to discover: human remains. The forensic anthropologist on site made a preliminary assessment. Female, adolescent, been here at least 5 years, possibly longer. Reeves stepped away, needing a moment alone. 7 years of searching, hoping against hope that Melody might still be alive somewhere. Now it appeared they had found her, or rather, what remained of her, in this remote, lonely place. But as she composed herself to call the Parkers with the devastating news, her phone rang. It was the station. "Detective, we've got something," said Officer Jimenez, excitement evident in his voice. "Raymond Blackwell, we found him. He's been living under the name Richard Bennett in Albany, teaching at a music school there. And there's more." He hesitated. "Records show he has a 17-year-old daughter enrolled in a local high school. The timing matches, Detective. It could be her." Reeves froze, processing this information. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying Melody Parker might still be alive. Girl vanished on the way to piano lessons. 7 years later, a sheet of music found in the woods reveals." Chapter 7. The other girl DNA testing confirmed what Detective Reeves had begun to suspect. The remains found near the cabin didn't belong to Melody Parker. They were identified as Vanessa Reynolds, the 12-year-old who had disappeared from Vermont in 2013, Blackwell's suspected victim before he moved to Connecticut. "He follows a pattern," Reeves explained to her team as they prepared for the operation in Albany. "Abduct a girl, keeps her for a while, then when he's ready to move on, She didn't need to finish the sentence. The implications were clear and disturbing. Melody might still be alive, but for how long? If Blackwell was preparing to move again, time was critical. Surveillance photos showed a man matching Blackwell's description, now with graying hair and glasses, entering a modest suburban home with a teenage girl. Those 7 years had passed. The girl's features were consistent with an aged-up version of Melody Parker. The same dark hair, similar facial structure. "We can't be certain it's her." Reeves cautioned the Parkers over a video call. "We need to prepare for all possibilities. If it is Melody, she's been with this man for 7 years. Stockholm Syndrome is a real concern. She may not immediately recognize you or want to leave with you." Laura and Daniel nodded, their faces a complex mixture of hope and dread. "What do you need from us?" Daniel asked. "Stay at the hotel in Albany. Be ready, but let us handle the approach. If we confirm it's Melody, we'll need you nearby, but not at the scene initially." The next morning, Reeves watched from an unmarked car as Richard Bennett left for work at the Albany Conservatory of Music. The teenage girl emerged 30 minutes later, wearing a backpack and headphones, apparently heading to school. "Target 2 is on the move," Reeves said into her radio. "Intercept as planned." Chapter 8. Melody's truth, the girl who had been living as Sophia Bennett, sat rigidly in the interview room at the Albany Police Department, her face expressionless as Detective Reeves introduced herself. "I know who you are," the girl said quietly. "You're from Oak Ridge. You're here about Melody Parker." Reeves nodded, careful to maintain a neutral tone. "And you are—" A flicker of emotion crossed the girl's face. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. "I'm Sophia Bennett now. But yes, I was Melody Parker." The admission, so straightforward after 7 years of searching, momentarily stunned Reeves. "Melody, your parents, they're not my parents anymore," Melody interrupted, her voice hardening. "Ray is my father now. He saved me." Over the next hour, a disturbing narrative emerged. Raymond Blackwell had approached Melody in Wilson Park, claiming to be a colleague of Mrs. Abernathy's. He'd said her piano teacher had been in an accident and asked him to fetch Melody for an emergency lesson at his studio, the old Studio 37 at Westbrook Building. "I wrote the studio information in my music to remember it," Melody explained. "But when we got there, I realized something was wrong. That's when I wrote 'Not Alone.' I heard someone else in the building. I thought if I left the music behind, someone might find it and understand. Why didn't you run? Try to get help?" Reeves asked gently. He had a knife, and he knew where my parents lived, where I went to school. He said if I tried to escape, he'd hurt them. Tears filled her eyes for the first time. I believed him. Melody described being taken to the cabin, where Blackwell kept her for months, forcing her to practice piano for hours each day. He said I had talent that my parents were wasting, that he could make me great. And the other girl, Vanessa? Melody's face went blank again. She was there when I arrived. She tried to help me escape. Ray caught us by the tunnel. He got angry. I never saw her again after that night. That's when he wrote on my music. She's safe now. Don't look. He made me believe he'd sent her home. With each revelation, the psychological manipulation Blackwell had employed became clearer. Over time, he had convinced Melody that her parents had stopped looking for her, that they had moved on with their lives, that only he truly cared about her musical gift. He forged new papers for us, created a whole backstory. I became his daughter, Sophia. We moved several times before Albany. Each place, new piano teachers, new schools. Her voice dropped to a whisper. After a while, it was easier to just become Sophia. But you never completely forgot Melody, Reeves observed. The girl looked up, something of the real Melody Parker shining through the years of conditioning. I kept the Chopin. Ray didn't know it was the piece I was practicing when he took me. Every time I played it, I remembered who I really was. Chapter 9. Reunion. Raymond Blackwell was arrested at the conservatory without incident, his carefully constructed identity crumbling as officers led him away in handcuffs. DNA evidence from the cabin would link him to Vanessa's murder, while Melody's testimony ensured he would never be free again. The reunion between Melody and her parents took place in a private room at the Albany Police Department, with a trauma counselor present. 7 years had transformed their little girl into a guarded young woman. Her movements measured, her responses carefully controlled, signs of the psychological prison for which she was still emerging. "Melody?" Laura whispered, taking a tentative step forward. For a long moment, the girl simply stared, as if struggling to reconcile the actual parents before her with the abandoning villains Blackwell had described. Then, slowly, recognition softened her features. "You kept my room," she said unexpectedly. "All this time." Daniel nodded, too overcome to speak. "Ray said you'd forgotten me, that you'd moved on." Her voice cracked slightly. "But you kept looking." "We never stopped," Laura assured her, taking another careful step closer. "Not for a single day." What followed wasn't the dramatic, tearful embrace of movie reunions. Instead, Melody allowed her mother to take her hand, a small gesture, but monumental in its significance. It was the first step on a long road of recovery, of reclaiming the identity that had been stolen from her. 6 months later, Melody Parker sat at her family's piano for the first time since her abduction. The keys were familiar beneath her fingers, despite the years away. She had been receiving therapy, slowly reconnecting with her past while processing the trauma of her captivity. The piece she chose to play was not Chopin's Nocturne, that carried too many complicated emotions now. Instead, she began a simple melody she had composed herself, her first original composition. Laura and Daniel sat nearby, listening as their daughter filled their home with music once again. In the kitchen, Detective Reeves sat with a cup of coffee, having stopped by to share an update on the case. Blackwell had confessed to 3 other abductions dating back to 2007, bringing closure to families who had waited even longer than the Parkers for answers. The sheet music that had broken the case open was now preserved as evidence, but Melody had asked for photographs of it, a reminder how her own small act of resistance, writing those coded clues in the margins of Chopin's Nocturne, had eventually led to her freedom. As the last notes of Melody's composition faded, a moment of silence filled the house before gentle applause from her parents. From the kitchen, Reeves could see the family, still wounded, still healing, but together again against impossible odds. Melody turned on the piano bench, making eye contact with the detective who had never given up searching for her. The girl who had been forced to become Sophia Bennett, who had survived years of captivity and psychological manipulation, offered a small but genuine smile, her first since coming home. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with therapy sessions, adjustments, and the challenge of reclaiming 7 lost years. But as Melody began another piece, her fingers finding the keys with growing confidence, there was something that had been absent for too long in the Parker household. There was hope. Melody Parker disappeared on a route she had walked hundreds of times, just 11 blocks to her piano lesson, and was never seen again. If this case left you thinking, click like. It helps more people learn about these stories and stay alert. And tell us in the comments, what do you think happened to Melody Parker? Was there something hidden in that park no one found? We read every comment, and your thoughts help keep these stories alive. At Gone Cold, we bring you new unsolved cases every week. See you in the next video.